Hershey Park is one of the best amusement parks in the country and is one of my personal favorites. They have one of the best random parks in terms of coasters. Now with Candymonium, their future is looking brighter than ever. Today I'm going to name 5 coasters that Hershey Park needs most, while still keeping the list somewhat realistic. Hershey Park has been getting new coasters every few years for a while now, so the 5 coasters I list today can very likely end up at Hershey Park over the next 15 years. For starters, I want to look at what coasters the park has and where their biggest gaps are. Hershey Park doesn't usually care about spending a lot on coasters, so budget isn't really a factor. The land they have available could cause an issue, so I will keep this list as realistic as possible. Keep in mind, Hershey Park is already a great park, and the coasters I mentioned on this list would just make them even better. If you like this type of video, I may do it for a lot of the other amusement parks in the US, so let me know in the comments. For a park to be well-rounded, they need a launch coaster, a coaster focused on airtime, a coaster focused on inversions, an invert, and a woody. Hershey Park checks every one of these boxes, with Storm Runner checking off launch, and multiple coasters checking off airtime and inversions. Great Bear is an invert, and they have 3 wooden coasters. So as expected, Hershey Park is a well-rounded park. But for a park to be top tier or well-rounded, there are some other boxes to check off. A dark ride, an indoor coaster, a hyper coaster, a giga coaster, a water coaster, a spinning coaster, a coaster with a vertical drop, at least 1 B&M, an Intamin, an RMC, and a unique experience coaster. A unique experience, I mean a flying coaster, a wing coaster, a 4D free spin, or even an axis coaster. Hershey Park checks off most of these boxes, having a dark ride with Reese's Cup Fusion and an indoor coaster that also checks off the spinning coaster box with Laugh Track. Candymonium and Skyrush both check off hyper coasters, and Fahrenheit has a vertical drop. Hershey Park also has a water coaster, but it's getting kind of old, and they have 2 B&Ms and 3 Intamins. The only things from this list Hershey is missing is a Giga Coaster, an RMC, and the Unique Experience Coaster. I will take these gaps into serious consideration when naming the 5 best fit coasters Hershey should add next. Keep in mind, for a park to be well-rounded, they need family-oriented coasters and good flat rides too. But Hershey has a solid lineup in that area, and I won't be discussing that for the purpose of this video. For starters, they need an RMC. RMC is all the rage now, and I don't think it'll be much time before Hershey gets an RMC. Most people suggested Hershey Park RMC Wildcat, but Airtime Thrills suggested the idea of RMCing Lightning Racer, making a dueling RMC similar to Twisted Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Honestly, I think that would be a better fit. Will make more sense considering Wildcat is the first GCI, and they may want to preserve it with the GCI Titan track. Now I have a different idea I think is possible for Hershey Park. Considering the price of a ground-up hybrid is rumored to be only around $10 million, Hershey Park should go with building a new RMC ground-up hybrid and let them break some record with it. It's Hershey Park we're talking about, so this is definitely possible and very much in their budget. This is the first coaster I think Hershey Park needs most, and honestly it seems extremely likely, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it come before 2023. The second coaster I think Hershey Park needs most is a B&M that could fill the unique experience gap in their lineup. There are a few different options when looking at a possible B&M coaster. Since the first surf coaster hasn't been built yet, I will keep that out of this video. Some B&M models Hershey could get are the Dive, Wing, or Flyer. Now let's look at parks near Hershey Park and see what they have. Cedar Point isn't too far away, but they are not so close to Hershey either, and they have a Dive and a Wing. While Six Flags Great Adventure, which is a little closer to Hershey than Cedar Point, has a Flyer. So I'm thinking Hershey should change it up a bit and add a launch to the B&M they get. Now Holiday World has Thunderboard, which is a B&M wing coaster with a launch. For the purpose of this video, let's say Hershey would want to go for the more unique option and build something that hasn't been built before. The dive coaster wouldn't really work either because they wouldn't be able to break any records with it, because they have a height limit of 200 feet and the tallest dive coaster is well over 200 feet, and they probably couldn't add a launch to a dive coaster. So I think Hershey Park should get a launched B&M flying coaster. That would fill the gap of a unique experience and give them another launch coaster as well as another B&M. This is the second coaster I think Hershey Park needs most, though any of the three B&Ms I mentioned would all be fine, and even if they didn't have a launch. And honestly, I think Hershey is way more likely to go with a regular dive or flying coaster for the coaster they get after the RMC. I think they'll get in 2023. The third coaster I think Hershey Park needs is a Mack Power Splash. If what I said in this video so far and Hershey adds a ground up RMC and a regular B&M dive or wing coaster, they will have just added a B&M, which is kind of on the expensive side of coasters. That would mean it would be time for a cheaper coaster. The water coaster would probably be pretty old by that time, and I think Hershey Park should add a Mack Power Splash. The Power Splash would give them a revolutionary water coaster and a second launch coaster. It could easily break a record with it, and it would be a really cheap addition I think Hershey Park needs. The fourth coaster I think Hershey Park needs is yet another launch coaster. Once we're on the topic of Hershey Park working with Mack, I think they need to get another coaster from Mack. A launched Mack Extreme Spinner would be nice, and I think Hershey Park could do it really nicely. They don't really need a Mack Extreme Spinner, but it's Hershey Park we're talking about, so why not? The fifth coaster I think Hershey Park needs is the coaster I think they need most, and a coaster I think they would have gotten in 2020, but they didn't get it for a certain reason, which sadly makes this coaster the least likely on the list. But after 2030, I think there's a chance. This is the B&M Giga Coaster. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hershey Park has a height limit of 200 feet, so how could they get a Giga? Well, that is true, but there's another interesting law for Hershey adding a coaster over 200 feet. They can only build it if they prove it's necessary, meaning if they need it to remain in business and it's a common thing. Now, I don't think a Giga is a necessity for a park, but a few years down the line, I think Hershey will argue for it, and I think they will get it. If they get a Giga, I think they will go all out. It would beat Fury's record and it would be insane. This is the final coaster I think Hershey Park needs, and I really hope this happens. Now, where would all these coasters fit? The Mack Power Splash could pretty much fit anywhere they decided to squeeze it in. If they were removing their old water coaster, they would definitely fit the B&M there. The Mack Extreme Spinner could take the place of Super Duper Looper and Sidewinder, or they could fit it in somewhere. I mean, it is Hershey Park we're talking about, and they are experts at cramming in coasters. The RMC I think could go in Chocolate Town right by the front entrance, and the B&M Giga could fit well. Where would the Giga go? I don't know where it could fit other than in Chocolate Town right beside the Candymonium. It would be really odd for Hershey to have two of the same coasters by the same manufacturer side by side, with one of them being a Hyper and one a Giga, so I don't know. Maybe they can buy more land? Anyway, if you notice the coasters I mentioned on this list, most of them would be massive additions that would become some of the best coasters in the world. It's Hershey Park we're talking about, and they do everything perfectly, so adding these 5 coasters, in my opinion, would make Hershey Park the best park in the country without a doubt, assuming no other parks added new coasters in the time Hershey added these. I mean, imagine going to a park with a B&M Giga, a B&M Hyper, and an Intamin Hyper, an Intamin Accelerator, and a ground-up RMC. Comparing this to Cedar Point, Hershey would have an RMC just like Cedar Point Steel Vengeance. Hershey would have a B&M Giga, which would compare to Millennium Force. Storm Runner would compare to Top Thrill Dragster, and Skyrush could compare to Magnum, and that's not counting Candymonium, the Mack Extreme Spinner, their other B&M, the 3 Woodies they have, and so much more. If Hershey added all these coasters today, they'd be better than Cedar Point. The question is really whether they can add them soon enough to eventually become the best park in the US. Hershey is already a top 10 park, and they have no issues breaking the bank for new coasters, and they get them rather often. That's a recipe for success. If you notice, I didn't mention any Intamin coasters, rather mention Mack rides, as I think Hershey Park will move away from Intamin a little bit, though I can't totally see them installing an Intamin launch coaster. Many people say Hershey Park left Intamin after Skyrush, but I don't think that's necessarily true, as since Skyrush, they built a family coaster and another hyper, and they wouldn't go to Intamin for any of those. So it's very possible Hershey Park is one of the only parks in the US still okay with Intamin, and if they do go back to them and build a crazy and awesome coaster, I would not be surprised. Intamin can make a comeback in the US if they manage to sell one of their newer models to Hershey Park, and one of their Hershey parks, they could slowly make their way into the Cedar Fair chain, and if they find a clone-able coaster, maybe into the Six Flags chain too. Another thing you may have noticed is that I didn't talk about the S&S Axis coaster, and that's just because I don't see Hershey as a type of park to build a wild spinning type of ride. I feel that's more Six Flags style. Anyway, let me know if you think Hershey needs any of the 5 coasters I mentioned, and whether you think they will get any of them.